Now let's go behind the rock screen.
You're welcome to come on in. We'll bring out the moonshine and start telling lies and calling up the women. But no talk about racing. Come on.
Hey everybody, Josh here with the Dirt Court Jesters podcast. Gracious enough to be joined by Steve and Mike Linder with Fremont Speedway Motorsports Program. Gentlemen, thanks for hopping on with me.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
You know, I've been seeing, I want to say this started up last year. Am I correct that it started up in 24?
Almost a year to the date. Yeah, we're right at a year.
So, I mean, the first, and I told you guys this, there will be some easy ones. The first question that comes to mind, and by all means, if you both feel like answering or one feels like answering, have at it. What made you come up with this idea?
Farmer is the one that came up with it. He approached us at the racetrack up here at the Speedway. It was about maybe spring, midsummer, with the idea of possibly doing this, and it all depended on if he was to become the promoter of the Speedway, Fremont Speedway, and it all banked on that because we would need access to the racetrack. And so he did acquire the Speedway in the fall of would be 23,
yeah.
And then as soon as he acquired the track, we started the whole process of getting everything going with this.
Is it fair for me to say that, Steve, you're more of the, I need my car to run good, could you do that for me? And Mike's more of the, hey, we're going to test this car out. Why don't you hop in and drive it? Is that fair?
Well, yeah, well, go ahead here, Mike.
Yeah, so I raced for 30 years, close to 30 years, and all kind of different cars and pavement, dirt cars, winged, non-winged, and Stephen was a crew chief through it all. And so once I quit driving, we took on taking care of teams, and he stayed as the crew chief role, and I kind of morphed into a driver coach type of role. And, I didn't have any natural talent, so I had to learn how to do everything I did in the race car. I had to learn it. And so, you always say that some guys that are really good at things aren't good teachers. And I think that's accurate. The saying of those who can do and those who can't teach. I feel like the fact I had to learn how to do things, it helps me relate and be able to say the words that guys need to hear to help them understand how to learn something. So the driver coach part of it comes real natural for me. And Steven's just, the crew chief side of it, he's done it his whole life as well. And so we each kind of fit into our roles and complement each other. And sometimes I'm a liaison between the driver and the crew chief, and then sometimes I'm the guy that's all over the driver for doing things wrong. So it's really a pretty cool balance that our roles don't overstep each other and they don't really overlap a whole lot. And so this, with the school, we kind of both fall into that role. And it's neither of us have any type of experience doing anything like this outside of at the racetrack. So in the formal setting of the school, it was really awkward for us at first, but once the class is rolling, we feel right at home at it. We feel like we're at the racetrack. So
Yeah, I can't tell that you guys are brothers because, Mike, when you said you weren't really natural at things, Steve kind of gave a smirk.
Yeah, he's not wrong. My first laps, I didn't understand the concept of counter steering. You think about people that get in a race car and drive race cars, and you see these young kids that race now. They come into the sprint car world at 14 and 15 years old, and they have natural ability along with almost 10 years of experience of racing. Where I strapped into a race car at 17 and realistically had no experience. And counter steering was, I had to learn how to do that. That should be something that is almost given to you at birth, and I didn't have it. And so I had to learn every aspect of it. So every lap I raced, I was making calculations the entire time, making decisions. Every straightaway, I was making decisions, and so I think with that helps me understand why somebody struggles with a certain aspect of driving a race car. They just can't grasp certain parts of it. The fact that I had to think that through on every aspect of it. And then we were fortunate enough to have some success. That helps me relate to those guys and understand the struggle. Guys that are really good and really naturally talented, they struggle to understand why other people don't, or, why someone else would struggle. They don't understand that, because it comes to them naturally. Where for me, everything was a struggle. And so I had to work my way through that. And I think it just helps helps me relate, and then with Steven, he was there with it all and saw it all, and was a part of it all. And it really helps us, for somebody just starting out, to understand what you're going through. And the school, as awkward as it is for us to get started with it, it's really natural for both of us now.
He's very good at being able to communicate with the drivers. So whether, in our past, whether it was Carson Macedo, Cole Macedo, Buddy Kofoid, or a list of other guys we've had, he's able to translate by having a conversation with the driver. He can understand what they're feeling, and then he can tell me what the driver is feeling, and in the words that him and I knew and understand, and I can hopefully make that correction and get the driver what he wants.
I got to tell you, the way you were explaining that, the first thing that comes to mind is a movie. So, Steve, are you Harry Hogg?
I don't even know who the hell that is.
Days of
Oh,
Thunder.
okay. Yeah. Well,
I was
so
pretty
if
young
you
when that
haven't-
come out. So
All right. Well, if you haven't seen it, that's fine. But I mean, that's
parts of it,
that's
I
part
know
of the
that's
issue that
blasphemy,
Cole has.
probably.
Cole has problems. He can't explain to Harry the car. He can't explain how to get the car to run right, and that's kind of part of the premise of the movie. So, I thought it was funny. One of my favorite movies, but
Good analogy.
I thought it was funny
yes.
you said that, because that was the very first thing.
I wish
thought.
I'd have caught that analogy quicker.
That's all right. That's all right. You guys talk about the motorsports program, and you've got on-track driving, you've got chassis setup, you got fuel system, and the weekly setups. My question is something that prompted me on this, and we talked about this off the air, and we'll talk about this here. This comes up on every single one of my episodes, is how easy it is to feel like you're part of the race. We went to Fort Crown last year, and I took my son, who's now about to turn 17, and he had a day he'll never forget. The night before, we ran into some folks, ended up talking to Hunter Maddox, and my son and his buddy, and there was another kid there. They were all the same age, and they're talking about how it'd be cool to help out with these guys and all that. And Hunter's like, bring them down. They can help. And so at Fort Crown, they're down there all day long, helping out as much as he would let him help, right? They're letting him help out on the car. And so now, since then, my son's been like, I think when I get done with school, I'm going to go to UNOH for high performance motorsports. And I'm like, well, I mean, if I'm frank with you guys, like I did not grow up with a wrench in my hand, right? So I could do some things, but definitely not much. And so when he's saying that, and I've been seeing a lot of stuff that you guys have been putting out lately, I wonder, do you have young kids coming in and trying out your chassis setup or your fuel system? And have you seen success with that?
We've had some young kids come through. Probably the youngest has been 16, and this would be his first year helping on a local car here. And then we've had a lot of father-son combos and that. Yeah, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, they are, like, our chassis setup class is a little advanced for, like, let's say your son, that wants to learn how to help on a race car, not necessarily be the crew chief. Where our chassis setup class is more geared towards like a driver crew chief combo. And we stress a lot of the language barrier, as I refer to it, between a driver and a crew chief. We try to help with that, along with mechanicing your race car better. So I like it when a driver and the crew chief are present, but it's a little advanced for the beginner. But we have our maintenance class, which is right in the wheelhouse. That gets to where, it's weekly maintenance, along with being able to do things at the racetrack and being able to help at the racetrack. So it's like for your son, that would be something that is more geared towards that. And where the chassis setup, I think, would bore them, it's pretty advanced, So, for the entry level person, if you've got a race car and you're going to race it, our chassis setup class is really good. But if you're just trying to learn how to help and be a valuable asset to a race team, especially like what your son's saying, and he wants to be able to help a little bit, the maintenance class is more geared towards that. So we got a little bit of everything, and when I talk to people, I do most of the communication with people that come through the program, prior to that. And I try to steer them in a direction that I feel like, after I talk to them a while about what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish, what their goal is, I try to help steer them in that right direction. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything for that entry level, like your son, up to people that are racing, all the time.
Sure.
It's almost a deal where you may want to, like for your son would be, that would also help him would be get hooked up with a team. There's guys in the pits. You can go to just about any race car and someone's looking for help. And that's
Sure.
also another way to get your foot in the door to help learn. And on top of the class, like the maintenance class, that could help guys advance faster.
Yeah, and I think with what you guys are doing, and how you're explaining it too, is it, everything progresses, right? As time goes on, things progress, right? And it feels like, I guess for me, from being, I've always been a fan, and I'm watching kind of on the outside. It seems like with what you guys are doing, it's kind of helping maybe people get their foot in the door that maybe normally wouldn't have a hand in working on a car at the track.
Yeah, absolutely. We had our first classes, there was a lot of pressure. There was people in there that bought race cars. They were planning on racing last year, and they did. And they're hoping to get some setup help. And then also on the other side, they never really worked on sprint cars, but they were going to race one. And so, the maintenance class and the fuel systems class were really valuable to them. And then we had a couple guys that ran through all of the program. They did the classroom stuff, and then once spring broke, then we got them out on a racetrack, and they were in their own race car. I talked to them as the driver coach on the radio, and when we see a prob, when they're out on a racetrack, we do 10-lap runs because I don't want people to repeat an error over and over and over again. So if I see them doing something, fundamentally wrong, I yell yellow into the radio, slow them down so they can hear me, they can think, and actually listen. I should explain to them what they're doing wrong and then turn them loose again. If you send somebody out for 10 laps and they make the same mistake 10 times, that almost started to become habit, so I want them to see an instant result. And so we can make the correction and then they can feel an instant result from it. And so, yeah, it's all the way through the program, from entry level guys to, we had one team that races currently, raced for years. They just are struggling getting a qualifying setup deal. And so we worked on qualifying for 70 laps. We worked on qualifying. And so it's tailored to whatever your needs are, whatever you want to accomplish. And if you want to get better up to, I just want to drive a race car. I want to drive a sprint car. I've never done it. We have that. And we have two teams that are currently racing that want to try to refine one aspect of the program.
And one thing that's really nice about it as well is that when we do go up to the racetrack and guys either rent our cars that we have or bring their own, that the racetrack is fully prepped. And so you're not running on a dry dust bowl. The track's got speed in it, so we can simulate qualifying runs, and get people their money's worth.
Nice. That's very nice. When you talk about qualifying, sorry guys, but the first thing that comes up is you just got to make sure you have the right qualifying wing on. Isn't that that's the solution to it, right?
Yes, yeah. It's and it's that way, in our sport, any sport really, or any form of racing, qualifying is everything, and yeah, you got to have the right stuff on it and cut your laps. I mean, that's your whole night.
I'm sure you guys saw this. This is kind of getting off sidetrack, but I'm sure you saw. Was it at Volusia where Larson was running the unfinished wing during qualifying, and then after that he put the finished wing on, and that was the talk of the town.
I don't know if people realize this, but Paul Silva likes to mess with people. I'm not. If he truly wanted to hide that fact that he had something, that wing would have looked just like the other wings. And yeah, it's a lot of people.
It could have meant something, and it also could have not meant something.
Right? Yeah,
it could have been. Oh, look here, while I'm doing this down here.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's Paul's a smart guy. And he don't. He's not going to play his card or show his cards. The wing was, it might have been different, but if it was truly something there, that wing would have looked like it, and you got to remember in the pit area, when somebody changes a wing, you don't hide that, it's not like you can do that behind a curtain. Everybody sees that. So no matter what that wing looked like, all of his competitors knew that. The fans in the stands might not, but all the competitors knew that they changed the wing, so.
Yeah. Very good point. I think the question comes to when you guys put this class together, how much did it take you back to school? Did you have to put a lot of time and effort and thought into like actually writing this out and in a program that you could present to somebody so that they could learn?
Yeah, it took quite a while. Just for instance, like part of the setup class, the beginning part of the setup class is we go through how to square up the front end of the car, and then after that's complete, we go to the back end of the car and square the rear end up. And I got a sheet, or should I say, we got a sheet made up that we go step by step by step, every single process that you got to do from loosening bolts to tightening bolts. Um, uh, to get that from beginning to end finished, and it's a full sheet of paper. The front end's 3 pages, and the rear end's 1 page, and it's full paper, and with pictures and stuff showing you what we're talking about with illustrations, and that took quite a while just to do that. Like in our race car shop here at Michael's house, when I go square a rear end or front end up, I just boom, 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 it's done. Well, if you got to tell somebody every step, that ends up being a lot. And we got that all wrote down step by step. That way, any novice or any even experienced people have no problem understanding how to do it. And then Michael went through and went through the curriculum of the class, what we're going to talk about, what order we're going to talk about it in, and that took quite a while.
And not to mention Stephanie's works at a local high school, and so she was an asset on, hey, this is how you could present it. The Google side of things and spreadsheets and the smart board and
learning how to use the smart board.
Right. We learn every time we use it. We find little tricks that we didn't know. But there was a huge aspect because neither of us are have college educations or we went through school because my mom and the law said I had to be there. And so, we put minimum effort, into high school. So, and that was a long time ago to boot. So, coming through this and doing this, it's taken, I watched a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of presentation videos and how people speak and those kind of things. We put a fair amount of time into that.
When it comes to the chassis and the fuel system and the weekly setup, I assume, those programs are pretty detailed, like you were explaining, Steve, with just from point 1 to 2 to 3 and so forth. When it comes to the on-track driving, is that detailed out of the gate, Mike, or is that something
it depends on what
I want to watch and see how this goes?
Right. There's a little bit of both. The answer to that is yes. It depends on what the person in the car is trying to accomplish. If they come to us and they're like Steven said, renting our cars, and all they want to do is just drive a sprint car, right? So at that point, all I want to do is make sure they have a good time versus fundamentally making really good laps. I want to make sure they have fun first, and they're comfortable, that kind of things. Once they accomplish that, then we work on a little bit of lap, as far as making a quality lap. But now, as far as somebody that's racing or they're going to race, now that gets extremely detailed. They'll maybe only run 2 laps consecutive before I slow them down, try to make a correction, and go from there because the limited number of laps on a racetrack. So we need to try to maximize every single lap to where they're getting benefit and seeing reward from doing things correctly. Whether that's stopwatch or a feel. And so, it depends on what the person in the car that I'm talking to, what they want to accomplish. And I had my high school metal fabrication teacher came through our program, and he just wanted to drive a sprint car, and so I wasn't pushing him, to, hey, you're entering 1.5 feet too low. That wasn't that conversation. But the young man that came through our program looking to get better at qualifying, that was every inch of that racetrack mattered. And we discussed it all, so yeah, just depends on what it is. To answer your question is yes, it's all of the above.
Do you guys feel like the way you have the program, obviously you're finishing up year 1, going into year 2. Is this something that you feel like we've got it right where we want it and we're not looking to change it? Or is this something as time goes on, like, maybe, I don't know, for example, maybe we add something regarding tires. Is that something that you guys have thought about yet, or are you still trying to feel this out?
Yeah, we talk about tires pretty in depth in the setup class. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I'm sure at some point we're going to come across something that that we didn't have wrote down on our curriculum sheet. But another thing is like in the class, a lot of the people there are asking questions, and there's some stuff that it seems like every class that we go through, every question seems to get asked. If you can imagine anything, they bring it up. And with we try to keep it to 10 guys and gals. There's been some gals that come through, or 10 or 11 people. We try to keep it small like that so that nobody feels like anyone's thinking less of them because they asked a silly question. It's a lot different if you had a group of 50, 60 guys at a seminar that you're talking to. It's way more intimate with a small group, and everyone feels way more comfortable to ask any question.
But to answer your question, we're actually floating online classes now. We're floating the idea of that and just trying to make sure we have the equipment to be able to do this, and having it to where people remote. We have a lot of people contacting us about that. I had a gentleman from Germany that's in the service that's going to go racing when he gets out of the service, and he wants to, he asked if we did anything online versus in-person classes. And so, and I've had 2 or 3 people approach me about that. And we're kind of limiting ourselves. We had a group of guys come from New Mexico, oddly enough, for in-person classes. But that's going to be pretty rare. And so to kind of expand our market, we feel like that online would be an avenue that we can do with versus in person. And so we've been just working with getting equipment around and how do we do this? How do we do it effectively? Because it's got to be a quality experience for the people that come. If it's not, that's going to fail. So we have to make sure that day one, the class one is a home run on as far as the technology side of it and our presentation. I feel like we're both pretty confident within the content that we go over. We're pretty confident with that's a pretty good setup right now. I'm sure it'll evolve, over time, but as far as the technology side of it, neither of us are tech guys. Stephanie had to set this up, to make it happen. And, but we feel like, we've got some really quality people around us that we can make sure that it'll be a good experience.
As far as what you guys are doing with the program, I mean, you've got, you're both covering your expertise here, and I'm certain that what you're putting on is great, and the reviews that you guys have been getting for your program have been great. You pointed out like you had some folks come from New Mexico. I think I heard or saw something about some folks from Port Royal.
Yes,
came for some classes. Like you said, year one, and you're getting these responses and these turnouts. What was this? What you expected, and what does it mean to you guys?
Well, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I really didn't know. I was a little blown away about the number of people that were contacting us before we ever had a class, and I actually told them that these people were sending deposits before they even knew if we had a building, and we didn't have any footage. We didn't have any photos, because it was class one, and these people were trusting us that didn't know us from Adam, and trusting us that they're going to show up and there's actually going to be a class. It was that simple, and so, now that we're a year into it, it's more than I hoped, more than I hoped for sure. The reviews, like you mentioned, have kind of blown me away. We hope that people have a good experience when they come, and we really stress that's the goal number one, is that when they leave, they feel like they have value, that we gave them some value. And so the reviews kind of echo that. We're really proud of that. But just the interaction that we have after the classes is probably the thing I'm most proud of personally, is that I'm on the phone with people that went through our program, virtually a year ago, and we're still having conversations, text messages at the racetrack. This past summer, I worked at Fremont at the racetrack in the tower, and this year I'm not. So now I can give a little more time. We're helping Howdy Sabo, but I can give a little more time at the racetrack with people now. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, just the after the class conversations, the trust that they have in us to give them good feedback and good advice I'm probably most proud of that. Your workload, that's what you can control, but how people react to it, you can't control that, so the fact that they're reacting well, that's what I'm probably most proud of.
Is the scheduling something where you want to try to do it more often in the off season? I don't know that I've really, I guess, looked at how you guys schedule it as far as like what kind of pattern you have, but do you try to dial it back a little bit when it's hot and heavy here in Ohio in the summertime?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Yeah, it virtually stops in the summertime. We have everybody's racing, so the classroom side of it, our classroom side is all off season. It's all off season, and then the driving part of it takes over in the summer. And it really works out great. It's almost like they just don't overlap much at all. By the time people want to go racing, they're not wanting to be sitting in a classroom on a weekend. We only do them on the weekend. So everybody's at the racetrack. Anybody that's going to be interested in taking them is already at the racetrack. So they're not going to be taking classes. So that dies off. But then the on-track classes take over, and just the scheduling side of it, it just keeps you so busy. We wouldn't have time to do both. We'd have to get some help, to be able to do both. These race cars that people drive are full-blown race cars, and they require the exact same maintenance as a car that races every Saturday or Friday. So when people get done, that car needs to be fully serviced, and so it takes just as long as a car that races on Friday, to service these cars as it does, as anything else. So yeah, the time, as far as the scheduling, it's driving packages in the summer and the classroom stuff in the off season.
And Mike, you talked about how it seems kind of natural for you to teach people when you're trying to help them learn how to drive a sprint car. So, Steve, what is it like? What has it been like for you to try and help people understand setting chassis up or working fuel systems or the weekly setup? How has that been for you?
It is tough for me. I'm not gonna lie. It's hard for me to articulate what's in my mind and getting out in words for people to understand. It's like when I'm at the racetrack, I don't really like with our guys help our team, whoever we're affiliated with. It's almost like we're all reading each other's mind in a way. Well, when we're at the class, and doing things in there, I gotta tell everything that I'm thinking, and that's the part that was hard for me to do. And to be honest with you, every class we have, I do start off a little bit rusty. I don't think that the people know that, but me, I'm dying inside. And then after about 15, 20 minutes of talking, I get comfortable and I can start spewing out the words that they want to hear or that they need to hear.
Very good. Very good. I know you guys have registration open up. It might be filled up. I haven't looked, but you've got a next set of classes coming up Saturday, March 22nd, and you've got Brad Doty joining in on that.
Yes,
that is awesome for chassis setup, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, Brad's been a huge supporter, and I'm very fortunate that I can call Brad a friend. He's a hero, right? I mean, it's freaking Brad Doty, right? And so I'm very fortunate, and this kind of come through Stephanie through helping with Brad's race at Attica. She helped do some social media work, and that's kind of how I got to meet him. And now we're pretty proud that I can consider him a friend, and so he's been extremely supportive, as you have on social media, as far as the school, and he's been very supportive and helping out. And I invited him. I just thought, he asked a lot of questions about it when we talk on the phone, and so I invited him. I said, you need to come and check it out. And so he's coming up, and he's just going to be a small part of it, but he wanted to be there, and he said, hey, if it helps you in any way, Brad's modest. I don't know if you've met Brad, but he feels like that his name couldn't sell a ticket in the world. But every outlaw show at Attica seems to sell a lot of tickets, But and so he said, hey, if you can put my name on something and help yourself out a little bit, that'd be great, And so it's going to be awesome to have him there. He's such a smart guy and such an asset to our sport. That it's going to be great to have him there.
Yeah, that's really cool. And is this the first time you've done something like that, having somebody hop in with you guys and help out?
It is. And we did have, we call them the kids, but the Macedos and Buddy and guys like that come for an autograph session. When the Outlaws came to Fremont last year, they came for an autograph session and kind of a meet the fan day. the 83 car, the Roth car, the serviced race car in the school. Just kind of made a day of it. We've had that, but as far as in the classroom wise, he and I don't like to ask a lot. It's kind of just do it yourself type of thing, make it happen. And Brad has been, asking a lot of questions about it, and it kind of come to me that hey, maybe this is something he would be interested in, and more so, not so much for us, but for him. I just want him to be a part of it. He's a great guy, and I just want him to be a part of it. And so, yeah, this is the first time we've had anybody like that, to come in and be a part of the class.
You guys were saying that, so typically you have 10 in a class, and you also have, like I mentioned, Saturday, March 22nd, chassis setup with Brady Doty. Sunday, March 23rd, weekly maintenance and fuel system. 10 for all of those classes.
That is correct.
Weekly maintenance and fuel. Are those one class, or is it two separate?
All three classes are separate. You can package them and take all three together if you wish, but they're all three separate, and for the most part, it's probably 50-50 of the people that take all three versus people that take individual classes. The chassis setup class is far head and shoulders our busiest class. That's the one that people want the most. And the fuel system class and the maintenance class are, they're about equal to each other as far as interest level. But yeah, it's they're all three separate. You can take just one if you want, or you can take them all. But Saturdays on the 22nd, for instance, we're doing the setup class, and that takes all day. That's a whole day thing. And then on Sunday, then we do the fuel system class in the morning. That's from till about lunchtime, from 9 a.m. till about lunchtime. And then the maintenance class is from lunchtime on till whenever we're done. We shoot for 5 o'clock is where we try to get it. We try to be buttoned up by then. But depending on people's interest level or their questions, it could go longer. We don't care. We want them to be happy.
We've had I'll call it the post-class sessions go up to an hour. When we close the book and we say, anybody else got any questions? And it kind of turns sometimes a little bit into a BS session, but there's still guys that they think of things and they're writing stuff down throughout the class, and they'll ask it afterwards, or we'll go out into the shop where the actual race cars are kept, and they want to look at stuff on them cars to see how we did it or how we think they should do theirs. And yeah, that sometimes that's another hour.
We may have touched on this and kind of wrapping it up. Now that you've got a year under your belt with this, for both of you, what would you say is one thing that you thought, well, this is easier than I thought it was going to be, and one thing that this is more difficult than I thought it was going to be?
I don't know.
Yeah. To me, I'll go first. To me, the scheduling is way more difficult than I thought. Just the effort level that you got to put into scheduling was a little more difficult than I anticipated it being. Yeah, that was that part. It's not hard, don't get me wrong, but it's just more difficult than I thought. I have to put more effort into it than I thought. To me, the easier than what it was is the actual classes. I didn't realize how natural it would be. I just, even though we're racers, and we talked before we started this about racers are your friends before you meet them. And when you get there, it's like you're at the racetrack. Everybody's got a same common goal, and everybody's there for the same reason. And not to mention for us, teaching wise, calling it teaching, but my wife, her students aren't as captive as ours are. Ours are captive. So
most of them all want to be there.
Right. It's easy. It's easy to deal with people that are captive and want to be there. But that part goes a little more natural for me. That went better than I was really nervous, and Stephen was nervous. I was really, and I still get goosebumps or butterflies, I should say, before we start. But once we get rolling, it's like you're at the racetrack. You're just having a conversation with the guys, about what does left rear drive do to this race car, and so it gets to be pretty easy.
Yeah. I don't know if this is part of what you just asked, but one thing that shocks me still every class is the amount of note taking that the people do. We had we got these yellow legal pads, and we had a person fill out an entire pad in one day. It's like every word that came out of our mouth was written down, but it's very I don't want to say shocking, but I don't know what the right word would be. It's just when you say something, and whether it's talking about torsion bars, or if we're talking about shocks or whatever, and you actually got to pause before you go to the next topic or to the next sentence, because the people are all writing stuff down. And that was one thing we had to learn on the very first class, is to give people more time to write notes down. And but just watching the people writing down the things that you say is very cool.
Yeah, it's excuse me, it's a lot to especially you're talking about the people that don't, like, I'm trying to learn, I don't have any knowledge. It's a lot to digest, right? And I can tell you, me personally, like, if I don't know something but I want to know it, I'm going to try to document as much information as I can, especially coming from you guys. I mean, let's be honest, like, you guys have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this. So if I'm attending the class, of course I'm going to try to document as much as I can so I can take it with me. So, because I don't know about you guys, but me, I'm so forgetful sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but it's a lot of, you guys have done it so long, like you were explaining, like, it's hard for you to explain to somebody because it's just second nature to you.
Yeah.
So if somebody's trying to learn, because it's been a long time since you were trying to figure it out, right? Like, you go to the track and do your thing and don't think a second thing about it. So that's interesting you say that, because I know if I were in the seat there in your class, I would be doing the same thing.
And like, to add to what Stephen was saying, I've never in my life been in a situation where you say something and somebody wrote that down. You want to talk about a humbling experience. You know what I mean? It is just race cars, right? We're just trying to make race cars go around in circles. And so it's not, it's not like we're putting anybody on the moon or we're catching rockets, right? It's just race cars. But to have somebody, when you say something and to be fair, it's most of that's an opinion, right? And so to say something and somebody writes that down, that's pretty humbling. It just we feel like we're just trying to get back to sport. We've all been on the take end of the sport for a long time, and just out there just working and trying to do a good job and trying to win races. And now we get to look at guys and we see a classroom full of people that want to be better. What a cool opportunity, right? To try to help somebody and to have them come to you like this, and they're paying money to be there. That that feeling is really cool. That part of it. We both enjoy that aspect of it, and we don't, you don't really think about it because you're just working. You're just trying to do a good job, trying to make them happy, trying to do a good job. But when it's all over, you just realize what just happened, and that's pretty cool.
From on-track driving for first-timers to experienced drivers, as well as working on the cars to get them to the track and to be successful, whether it's something somebody's just starting to work on or they're experienced in and they're trying to gain a little bit more experience, you guys got it covered. I hope things continue to grow for you with the program. Steve and Mike Linder with the Fremont Speedway Motorsports Program. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Guys, this is Josh with the Dirt Court Jesters podcast, and we hope to see you at the track.